Look at the razor in your bathroom. It probably takes you less than 5 minutes to shave. Now throw it away. Throw away your tweezers, your shaving cream, your mirror. Now travel back more than 3,000 years. Your hair is still growing. The question is, how did ancient humans deal with it? Most people think ancient humans simply let their hair grow. They didn't. For thousands of years, people plucked, scraped, burned, and even used early chemical depilatories to remove unwanted hair. Some of their methods were surprisingly advanced. Others were unbelievably painful. And archaeologists have the evidence to prove it. Now go back more than 3,000 years. The sun has only just risen over the Nile. The air is already warm, and another long day is beginning. You splash cool water across your face and catch your reflection in polished bronze instead of glass. As you run your fingers across your skin, you notice what every human being has noticed since the beginning of our species. Your hair has grown back. Not because anything has gone wrong, simply because that's what human bodies do. The question is almost too ordinary to seem interesting. How did people remove unwanted hair before the invention of modern razors? Most people assume they didn't. That excess hair was simply accepted as part of life. But archaeology tells a very different story. Long before electricity, modern chemistry, or even steel blades, people were already cutting, plucking, scraping, and experimenting with ways to remove body hair. They invested time, effort, and sometimes considerable pain into solving a problem that still exists today. Why? The answer isn't vanity, at least not entirely. It is a story about religion, about status, about cleanliness, about medicine, and perhaps most surprisingly, about one of the oldest human instincts of all, the desire to reshape our own bodies. That instinct is far older than civilization itself. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors learned to shape stone into knives, wood into spears, and animal hides into clothing. Eventually, it was only a matter of time before they began applying the same creativity to themselves, not because evolution demanded it, because culture did. But before we step into the temples of ancient Egypt or the crowded bathhouses of Rome, we need to understand something surprisingly simple. There are only a few basic ways to remove hair. You can cut it at the surface, you can pull it out from the root, or you can weaken it with chemicals until it separates from the skin. Modern technology has added lasers that target the follicle itself, but for most of history, those first 3 methods were all humanity had. And remarkably, ancient civilizations discovered every one of them, not yesterday, thousands of years ago. Archaeologists know this because they have found the tools. Excavations across Egypt have uncovered copper and bronze razors, finely crafted tweezers, mirrors, combs, and complete grooming kits dating to the New Kingdom more than 3,300 years ago. Many of these objects were placed inside tombs, preserved alongside jewelry and other personal possessions. Their owners expected these tools to remain important, even in the afterlife. Think about that. When people prepare someone for burial, they choose the objects that mattered most during life. The Egyptians chose grooming tools. That tells us something powerful. Removing hair wasn't an occasional luxury. It had become part of daily identity. But here's where the story becomes much stranger. The Egyptians weren't trying to eliminate hair because they hated it. In fact, many shaved their heads completely, only to wear elaborate wigs. At first, that sounds absurd. Why remove your own hair only to replace it with someone else's? Because the goal wasn't to get rid of hair, it was to control it. A wig could be cleaned, styled, protected from dust, changed for ceremonies. It reflected order rather than neglect. In many ways, it served the same purpose as carefully styled hair does today. The technology changed. Human psychology did not. Religion also played an important role. More than 2,000 years ago, the Greek historian Herodotus described Egyptian priests shaving their entire bodies before serving inside temples. He explained that this practice helped prevent lice and maintained ritual purity during religious ceremonies. Historians continue to debate some details of Herodotus's writings, but archaeological discoveries and Egyptian religious evidence support the broader conclusion that bodily grooming formed part of temple life. Notice something interesting. The motivation wasn't simply appearance. Hair became connected to ideas of order, purity, discipline, and belonging. The body itself became part of religious practice. But owning a razor is one thing. Knowing how to remove hair safely is another. This is where ancient medical texts reveal something remarkable. One of the oldest surviving medical documents in the world is the Hearst medical papyrus, copied around the 15th century BC. Among its many treatments are recipes specifically intended to remove unwanted hair. Another famous text, the Ebers papyrus, preserves additional formulas using combinations of fats, resins, minerals, and plant ingredients. Whether every recipe actually worked remains uncertain, but the documents prove something historians can say with confidence. People were actively experimenting, generation after generation, trying different materials, keeping what seemed useful, discarding what did not. That process should sound familiar, because it is exactly how innovation still works today. Not through sudden miracles, through thousands of small experiments, some successful, some painful, some both. A few of these recipes sound surprisingly practical. Sticky plant resins, natural gums, animal fats, heated mixtures that may have clung to hair before being pulled away. Others sound much stranger, reflecting a world where careful observation often existed alongside symbolic beliefs. Ancient medicine was never purely scientific, but neither was it purely superstition. It occupied the long, difficult path between the two, and every generation moved a little further forward. Before we continue, I'm curious about something. These stories connect people from every corner of the world because they're part of our shared human history. So tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I genuinely love to know how far this journey into the ancient world has traveled. But Egypt wasn't the only civilization trying to solve this problem. Across the Mediterranean, another culture transformed hair removal into something far more public. It became a business. Professional specialists earned their living pulling hair from complete strangers. The procedure was loud, painful, and according to one Roman philosopher, you could hear the screams echoing through the bathhouse long before you reached the door. And that's where our story goes next. Professional hair removal sounds like a very modern idea, something you'd expect to find in a shopping mall or a luxury spa. But step into a Roman city nearly 2,000 years ago, and you would discover that people had already turned grooming into a business. Not a side hobby, a profession. Imagine walking through the narrow streets of Rome just after sunrise. Merchants are opening their shops, blacksmiths are already hammering hot iron, fresh bread drifts from nearby bakeries, and ahead of you, steam rises from one of the city's public bathhouses. These weren't simply places to wash, they were gyms, social clubs, business meeting rooms, places where friendships were made, political deals were discussed, and daily life unfolded. If you wanted to understand Roman society, you didn't begin at the palace. You began at the baths, and once you stepped inside, you quickly realized something unusual. People weren't only washing themselves, they were improving themselves. Massages, haircuts, skincare, and body hair removal. The Romans believed that caring for the body reflected discipline and civilization. A well-groomed appearance often carried social meaning, particularly among wealthier citizens, although fashions varied over time and between social groups. But here's where history becomes surprisingly loud. One of the best descriptions doesn't come from archaeology. It comes from a complaint. Around the 1st century AD, the Roman philosopher Seneca wrote a letter describing the unbearable noise coming from a public bath near his home. He listed athletes exercising, merchants shouting, splashing water, and then he mentioned something that almost feels like a joke: a professional hair plucker. Seneca described a man who shouted loudly to attract customers and only stopped shouting once he actually began pulling hairs out, because then the customer was the one screaming. Think about that image. Thousands of years later, we can still hear the sounds of an ordinary Roman afternoon. Not because someone wanted to preserve history, because someone was annoyed by the noise. And that's often how archaeology works. History survives in unexpected places. Was Seneca exaggerating? Possibly. He was writing with humor. But the remarkable part is that archaeology supports the larger picture. Excavations at the Roman city of Wroxeter in Britain uncovered dozens of bronze tweezers among the remains of bathhouses. Similar grooming tools have been found throughout the Roman world, suggesting that personal grooming and hair removal was a routine part of life, rather than an unusual luxury. Those tiny tweezers tell a surprisingly big story, because tweezers don't survive by accident. Someone made them, someone bought them, someone carried them. Someone used them often enough that thousands eventually found their way into the archaeological record. The evidence isn't limited to tools. Ancient writers also noticed changing ideas about appearance. The Roman historian Suetonius described Julius Caesar as taking exceptional care of his appearance, including removing unwanted body hair. He made a similar observation about the Emperor Otho, who was also known for wearing a carefully arranged wig to conceal hair loss. At first, this sounds contradictory. Men removed body hair, while trying to replace hair on their heads. But the contradiction disappears once you understand the goal. Like the Egyptians before them, Romans weren't trying to eliminate hair altogether. They wanted control. Too much body hair could appear unrefined. Too little, however, could invite criticism for appearing excessively concerned with appearance. The ideal constantly shifted. Sound familiar? Modern fashion changes every decade. Ancient fashion did too. Human beings have always negotiated where personal care ends and vanity begins. That conversation is much older than social media, but pulling out individual hairs one at a time sounds painfully slow. Because it was. So people searched for faster solutions. Some Roman recipes relied on sticky mixtures made from wax, pine resin, or pitch mixed with oils. These substances could grip multiple hairs at once before being removed, operating on the same basic mechanical principle as modern waxing, although the ingredients were quite different. Others attempted something much more ambitious: chemistry. Instead of pulling the hair out, destroy it. Roman writers describe depilatory mixtures containing quicklime and, in some cases, arsenic compounds. The basic chemical idea was surprisingly sound. Strong alkaline substances can weaken keratin, the protein that gives hair its strength, allowing it to be wiped away. Modern depilatory creams still rely on that same principle. The difference is precision. Today's products are carefully tested, manufactured at controlled concentrations, and include detailed instructions. Ancient mixtures depended almost entirely on experience. If the concentration became too strong, or if the paste remained on the skin too long, it might remove more than just hair. Chemical burns were a very real possibility. Think about the courage, or perhaps the desperation, that required. Someone had to be the first person willing to spread an unknown mixture across their skin. Innovation has always carried risk, sometimes much more than we imagine. Roman encyclopedist Pliny the Elder collected dozens of unusual recipes intended to prevent hair from growing back. Some included ingredients that sound extraordinary today, such as animal blood, bile, or other symbolic materials. Modern science provides no evidence that these particular ingredients permanently prevented hair growth, but they reveal something fascinating about human psychology. People have always searched for permanent solutions, long before laser technology, long before dermatology, long before anyone understood hair follicles. The desire remained exactly the same. The science simply hadn't caught up yet. If you've made it this far, comment tweezers. I'm always curious how many people stay for the part where history becomes stranger than fiction, because we've only reached Rome. The story is about to travel much farther. As the Roman Empire slowly faded, many people imagine knowledge disappeared with it. But knowledge rarely vanishes. It travels. It changes languages. It crosses deserts. It survives inside books copied by hand. And in the centuries that followed, physicians working across the medieval Islamic world would preserve ancient medical knowledge, improve it, and develop hair removal techniques that sound surprisingly familiar even today. Some of them are still being used, almost unchanged, 1,000 years later. And that's where the next chapter of our story begins. Professional hair removal didn't disappear with the Roman Empire. Neither did the desire for smooth skin. Empires rise, empires fall, but ordinary human problems have a strange habit of surviving them all. Hair kept growing. People kept looking for ways to remove it. And knowledge kept traveling. Imagine standing in Baghdad around the 9th century. The city is unlike anything Europe has seen for centuries. Its streets are crowded with merchants from Africa, Persia, India, and Byzantium. Libraries are overflowing with books translated from Greek, Syriac, Sanskrit, and Persian. Physicians debate anatomy. Chemists experiment with minerals and plants. Scholars copy manuscripts late into the night by the light of oil lamps. History often remembers this period for mathematics and astronomy. But something quieter was happening too. Medicine was evolving, not by starting from nothing, by preserving what earlier civilizations had discovered and improving it. Among the physicians whose work shaped this world was Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi, known in Europe as Abul Qasis. Living in Cordoba during the 10th century, al-Zahrawi wrote an enormous medical encyclopedia called Al-Tazrif. More than simply listing treatments, he described surgical instruments, cosmetic procedures, wound care, dentistry, and personal hygiene with remarkable detail. Hidden among these subjects were instructions for dealing with unwanted hair. That alone tells us something important. Hair removal wasn't treated as vanity alone. It belonged inside medicine, inside hygiene, inside everyday life. And al-Zahrawi wasn't alone. Medical and pharmaceutical texts from Cairo, Damascus, Baghdad, and other centers of learning describe depilatory preparations used by both men and women. The ingredients varied. The principle did not. If hair could be weakened safely, it could be removed more easily. One preparation became especially famous: Nura. If you've never heard the name before, the chemistry behind it may surprise you. Unlike wax, which grips the hair mechanically, Nura attacked the hair itself. Most historical recipes relied heavily on quicklime, often combined with alkaline minerals that weakened keratin, the structural protein that gives hair its strength. Modern depilatory creams still work on exactly that scientific principle. They break down keratin until the hair can be wiped away. The difference is precision. Today's products are manufactured under controlled laboratory conditions. Every ingredient is measured, every concentration is tested, every package tells you exactly how long to leave it on your skin. Ancient preparations offered no such certainty. Too weak, and nothing happened. Too strong, and the skin itself could be damaged. Historical medical writers understood that risk remarkably well. Some recommended washing the skin immediately afterward. Others suggested applying oils or soothing preparations to calm irritation. They may not have understood keratin at the molecular level, but they understood burns. Experience had taught them. That pattern appears again and again throughout history. People often understood practical consequences centuries before they understood scientific mechanisms. They knew what worked, they simply didn't always know why. And perhaps that's one of humanity's greatest strengths. Observation comes before explanation. Long before chemistry became a science, people were already practicing chemistry. Long before dermatology existed, people were already solving dermatological problems. They simply used different words. But here's something even more fascinating. Not every culture searched for stronger chemicals. Some searched for better mechanics instead. Imagine another kitchen. Not in ancient Egypt this time. Not in imperial Rome. Not even in medieval Baghdad. Imagine a home somewhere in the medieval Middle East. Sugar is becoming more common than it had ever been before. Trade routes stretch across continents. Agriculture expands. New ingredients become easier to obtain. And suddenly an old idea becomes much more practical. Instead of dissolving hair chemically, why not pull it out? One motion, multiple hairs, no burning. Today we call it sugaring. It's often presented as an ancient Egyptian invention. The truth is more complicated. Egyptians certainly used sticky substances such as resins, gums, beeswax, and honey-like materials in various cosmetic preparations. Ancient medical papyri also preserve recipes intended for hair removal. But historians cannot confidently say that Cleopatra herself used the modern mixture of sugar, water, and lemon that fills beauty salons today. In fact, refined cane sugar remained relatively rare in the ancient Mediterranean for many centuries. The evidence points towards something more interesting. The idea is ancient. The recipe evolved, generation after generation, as new materials became available. Think about how often that happens. The wheel changes, the engine changes, the smartphone changes. But the underlying human problem stays exactly the same. Hair grows, people remove it, technology improves, the goal remains. If you've stayed with me this far, here's a question. Which ancient method would you be brave enough to try? A bronze razor, Roman tweezers, a medieval depilatory paste? Or would you rather stick with modern technology? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. As Europe moved into the late Middle Ages, ideas about beauty shifted once again. Paintings from wealthy households reveal women with remarkably high foreheads and exceptionally thin eyebrows. Those features weren't always natural. Hair along the hairline was often plucked to create the appearance considered fashionable at the time. Beauty standards had changed. Human behavior had not. Professional grooming specialists also continued to appear in cities and royal courts. Long before modern salons existed, people already paid others for cosmetic expertise. Some traveled between households, others worked in bathhouses. The business model changed. The profession survived. And when you step back from all these civilizations, Egypt, Rome, Baghdad, Cordoba, medieval Europe, a remarkable pattern emerges. None of them invented the desire to remove hair. Each simply inherited it, improved it, passed it to the next generation. History often celebrates inventions as if one brilliant individual suddenly changed everything. Reality is usually slower, more ordinary. Thousands of anonymous people experimenting, learning, sharing ideas, making small improvements that accumulated across centuries. The razor in your bathroom is one of those improvements. So are your tweezers. So is your shaving cream. Even laser hair removal belongs to the same story. Not a new chapter, the latest chapter. And perhaps that's the strangest realization of all. The next time you remove a single stray hair, you'll be repeating a routine that connects you to Egyptian priests preparing for temple rituals, Roman citizens walking into crowded bathhouses, physicians carefully copying medical manuscripts by hand, and countless ordinary people whose names history never recorded. Their empires disappeared, their languages changed, their cities crumbled. Yet one tiny part of their daily routine quietly survived. inside your own home. Every ordinary object has a history. Most of us simply never stop long enough to ask. So what have we learned? For thousands of years, people across different civilizations actively removed unwanted hair using the best tools and knowledge available to them. Ancient Egyptians left behind razors, tweezers, and medical texts, showing that grooming was already an important part of daily life. Romans transformed personal grooming into a profession, while later physicians in the medieval Islamic world refined chemical depilatories and preserved generations of medical knowledge. Modern razors and lasers may be safer and more effective, but the basic human motivation has remained remarkably unchanged for millennia. And here's one final thought. History isn't only hidden inside pyramids or buried beneath ancient cities. Sometimes it's hiding inside the smallest objects you use every morning: a pair of tweezers, a razor, a mirror, objects so ordinary that they become invisible, until you discover they've been quietly connecting you to your ancestors all along. In our next journey, we'll explore another everyday mystery that most people never think to ask. How did ancient humans deal with body odor long before deodorant, soap, and modern plumbing? The answer is far stranger than you might imagine. If you enjoyed uncovering another forgotten chapter of everyday human history, consider subscribing. There are thousands of ordinary questions whose answers reveal extraordinary stories about our species. And if you know someone who loves archaeology, history, or human evolution, share this video with them. You never know which forgotten story might change the way they see the modern world.